Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first will be a focus on the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's visit to China. And this is, of course, something that has been going on since the 4th of June. And, of course, a much anticipated visit by the Prime Minister. And, of course, the first of this kind and, of course, to this country since he has been elected into power this year. And so we're going to be taking a look at what this visit has meant so far and the kind of developments that have taken place, particularly when we talk about the CPEC project and of course phase 2 of this, which is a very major initiative for Pakistan, and of course important issues regarding the financial structures, the different development projects, and of course the security of Chinese personnel in Pakistan were part of the agenda that came under discussion. We also know that the Prime Minister held in-depth discussions with the Chinese President as well, and of course met with the Prime Minister too. And this is important, especially with regards to the way that we want to see this relationship further flourish and the direction that it's going to take in terms of trade and investment, along with, of course, other important sectors and collaboration, which include IT and agriculture and the rest. And so we're going to be taking a deeper look at what this visit has so far yielded and the way that we're going to expect the dynamics between the two to evolve in the near future. Our next segment is also going to be taking a look at one of the biggest achievements that Pakistan has again achieved, of course, with regards to how this is a way that Pakistan has been able to put forward its own stance in the international community and make sure that it's not ignored. We know that Pakistan once again has been elected as a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. This is a position that Pakistan has held previous times as well and has played a very important and responsible role in this regard. But this time Pakistan has also secured 182 votes, which is far more than the 124 that are required. This is, of course, something again that puts into question the way that we're going to be seeing the evolving role of the country, and especially in terms of the international situation all over the world, and particularly in terms of the conflict zones, what sort of a role this will be for Pakistan. And so it's going to be a change that we're going to be seeing since the 1st of January 2025. But what exactly will be the impact of this and what it means for the way the world is looking at Pakistan is something that we're going to be exploring further in our discussion today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. And for our first segment, I've been joined by Dr. Jamil Khan, who's a former ambassador. Thank you very much, Dr. Jamil, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And I'll start with you with reference to how we've seen the situation between Pakistan and China evolve as to how this is going to move forward and what sort of a dynamic it's going to be taking in. And Farrukh, let me take your perspective on this first, because when we talk about Pakistan-China's relations, of course, we go a long way back. But in particular, of course, the discussions that we see moving forward have been centered a lot on phase 2 of the CPEC project. And given, of course, the economic circumstances and difficulties that Pakistan has been facing for quite some time, we know that China has stepped up in the past also, and this time around too, as the true friend that it is. So what sort of trade and investment ties in particular are you looking at post this visit and then, of course, in the recent future?
Right, Sarana. The most important story coming from this visit right now is the importance or emphasis on the importance of security for CPEC. And I think that that has been one of the reasons why we saw some slowing down in the past. But with both countries actually working in tandem and working very closely, now it is assured that we are going to see more security. That means that projects like Gawad, whose commercialization has been actually been in limbo, is going to take off. We saw that our Chinese friends actually built one of the best airports in Gawad. Apart from that, of course, when we are talking about CPEC, so the first phase was primarily regarding infrastructure and energy. And now the second one is going to actually take a look at 2 or 3 very important things. One, SEZs, special economic zones, then of course transfer of technology and skill as well. And finally, when you talk about cooperation, so far it has been G2G or B2G, that is Chinese business, Pakistani government. Now what we are going to see is B2B cooperation as well. That means in coming days we are going to see more investment in CPEC related projects, may it be IT, may it be special economic zones, manufacturing as well, even agriculture. So Pakistan essentially has an FTA with China as well. The only problem is that our deficit, our trade is in deficit, right? We import more, we cannot export more because the Chinese market is more attuned to idea of value addition. So in coming days what we are hoping to achieve is actually getting the skill of adding value to our produce, and then that can be actually sent or traded off to China. And with that kind of a capacity, Pakistan and China's cooperation can play a very important role.
Absolutely. I think we've been joined now by Dr. Jamil Khan, who's the former ambassador. Dr. Jamil, can you hear me? Great, good to have you on the show. So Dr. Jamil, with reference to where we stand today, particularly of course with the PM being in China and of course looking at our relationship with China in the past and of course in the current times, what sort of evolving dynamics do you foresee, particularly when we talk about the CPEC project? And we'll of course share in further detail the kind of challenges that could possibly arise in the phase 2 of this project as well, and how we have learned from previous incidents or previous circumstances and have evolved since then. But I want your take first on the larger economic dynamic as well, in which of course CPEC plays a big part, but in terms of how we want to engage with the Chinese government and with the Chinese business community as well, especially when we talk about direct engagement with the Chinese businessmen and of course more B2B interactions.
Well, for our better understanding, in fact, if we just try and say evaluate what is the geopolitical situation in the region and around the globe these days, right? And then in that case, we'll probably be in a position to draw some distinction whether this very visit of the Prime Minister, is it like the previous visits, or does it have a better significance and more significance? Now, if we have into consideration the geopolitical dynamics, the containment of China, the Gaza, the Ukraine, other problems which are going on. So from that standpoint, and of course, the China and Chinese and Russians cooperation, both in the space weaponization as well as in trade, economics, military exercises, military collaboration, cooperation, facts. So all these factors, the indicators, if we have in our mind, then probably we'll reach to some conclusion. Most of the analysts would probably feel, and including myself, that this very visit is probably the most important visit of all the previous visits. And why it's so? And because China, from geo-economic profile, it is now transiting, and almost it has reached to a level where it can say itself that now they are working more on geopolitical approach to take China to a further height and to take the China to a further level of trajectory in the world. So once that happens, probably then only we'll understand the significance, enhanced significance of CPEC. Of course, when CPEC was designed and CPEC or BRI was introduced by President Xi Jinping, even at that time, he had a vision, and that vision is now translated into real practical results of it. And more than 42, and some people say that even 160 countries are somehow the other linked and linked, or they have signed some MOUs and agreements with China. And that is the best example of how the economic diplomacy has worked and how the soft diplomacy has worked in the world, and the collaboration, the importance, the significance of China increased in the eyes of the world. And that's why so many authors, so many analysts, so many thinkers. They give figures that the receding economy of United States is tilting towards in the favor of China. And why it's in the favor of China? China is number one manufacturing country since 2010. And China is number one trading country since 2013. And China is $18.5 trillion economy. China has given billions of dollars of loan to United States. China has a surplus trade. The United States was compelled just 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, that they had to impose 100% duty on their electric cars. But it doesn't work, because then it would have so much of harmful effect on the United States. So I can go on and go on how China has now attained its significance and supremacy in many respects on the geoeconomics front. Now, is it the fact that the United States is still number one so far as the military power is concerned, and still the United States or any other country who has the supremacy of its military, it would try and utilize that supremacy to translate it into the economic benefit or the economic the advantage of that country. Now, once it's receding, the competition gets higher and higher. And that's why you might have noticed today that both leaders today, it reviewed full spectrum of strategic cooperation of partnership. They defined new features of the relationship. And then CPEC, they said that we'll focus more and we will focus on the high quality of the CPEC, including the economic, special economic zone and agriculture, industry, other features. And they signed MOU, previous MOU 32, and today they signed about 23 MOU. And in that infrastructure, industries, media, health, socio-economic development, but more importantly, as the other panelist, our permanent panelist, Pitafi, was discussing the security feature of it. But one thing, probably so many of us have noticed that in that, both leaders, they said that we will not be deterred by the deflectors of the CPEC. And there's a very clear indication, we've been discussing it many programs, that how our enemies are, or how the detractors of CPEC want to take an advantage that either it should be slowed down or somehow it should be shelved. But I don't think they would succeed in it. And it's therefore the security aspects take the prime feature. And because of the external interference and because of the interest of the external forces, transnational forces, it becomes more significant that Pakistan has to confront some of the security. But one thing, China understands it quite well, perhaps better than us, that why the security issues in Pakistan, and particularly against the Chinese national. Northern national is as vulnerable today as if we view it from the standpoint of all the previous incidents of the terrorism and where they lost their life, our Chinese friends. So that we can understand why they are being targeted. Their projects and their individuals. The detectors and the deflectors, they are trying to, again, scare the Chinese nationals also, that they should think twice. Now comes another point. The Prime Minister is now going for B2B. And B2B is going very successful, and I've seen him personally while I was the ambassador there in UAE, and he was a chief minister. I saw with what vibrance and what vitality he would bring a huge number of the businessmen and have the conferences and meetings and country, the single country exhibition in UAE. So if I have that model in my mind, I can see in even the one of the leaders from China, the Chinese, the Exim Bank, he said that he's a Pakistani speed. Pakistan It is the title given to the Prime Minister this time. So if we try and just combine all these factors, Gwadar importance, it has been highlighted during this meeting. And
Absolutely. And
Gwadar
Mufti Sahab,
importance and this
I will actually
involvement.
come back to you with further detail, especially with regards to Gwadar and how we would be seeing that in this evolving dynamic. But Faisal, I want your take also, of course, on the security situation, and the ambassador has highlighted all the different areas and facets to it. But I also want your take, especially given the way that we have seen certain unfortunate incidents happen, and the way, of course, we know that there are external spoilers involved. This is, of course, very important for the success of the project, and of course for our relationship with China, and Chinese lives, of course, are as important to us as any other. So I want to understand that when we talk about this particular threat, what exactly do you think are the nuances involved in terms of who it is that we're dealing with, in terms of the intelligence sharing that is required, in terms of the finance aspects that are also involved, in terms of how we actually bring those people to task, how we prevent such incidents, and how exactly will there be more collaboration of regional players on this front to ensure that this security is indeed provided, and what sort of then agreements or assurances are we looking at, particularly with China, as we move in the next phase?
Yes, Sana, it's a very good question, and of course, when we talk about the security in between Pakistan and China, of course, we know that both of them, they are facing similar challenges as long as we are talking about CPEC, because even if the Chinese, Chinese teachers or Chinese engineers, they are getting targeted, the only reason behind it is that they are working on CPEC, and of course, there are forces. The external forces, the four forces, they do not like the idea of CPEC. They do not like Pakistan and China cooperating each other in the economic sector, and of course joining hands to strengthen Gwadar port, and of course Gwadar port becoming the next hub of Indian Ocean. They do not want that. That is why they have been pushing money towards the terrorism, to ignite terrorism in Pakistan, and to of course keep Pakistan unstable in terms of security, especially owing to the CPEC itself. We already know that the ground realities are that both of the countries, they have a good mechanism of intelligence sharing existing, which is going to be improved further, and this this particular visit, of course, we shouldn't be forgetting that our Chief of the Army Staff, he is along the Prime Minister as well, and the aspect of intelligence sharing, it is going to enhance further, because there are threats which are emanating from of course Afghanistan, and that are going to be countered in coming future, and still they are getting countered. And the second aspect, which is most important, and we have been seeing that in recent past, the cyber space of Pakistan, it had lots of threats, and that threat is too very very important to be countered. And in that context, we know that China has excelled. Chinese artificial intelligence and technologies out there, and then if we talk about the curbing the sort of ill use of social mediums, and how to of course keep an eye on the social mediums, they have excelled in that field. And we know that the hacking sort of which used to be taking over China, they have safeguarded their cyber space, and in Pakistan, of course, we lack that in this sector, and that too is going to be sort of point of concern, and the sharing is going to take place in that context as well, to safeguard the cyber world of Pakistan. So to me, I think it's a very important visit in the perspective of security domain, and in coming future we will be seeing that the attacks, be it the ground attacks or the cyber attacks or any attacks that are hailing from any direction, they will be countered more efficiently, and they will be countered with the joint efforts of China and Pakistan. And to me, I think this is a very positive sign, and Chief of Army Staff being in China, part of this visit, that was crucial and very important for this visit.
Absolutely. And Farrukh, I want to further explore, of course, the role that different areas of Pakistan will be playing for the success of CPEC, and particularly Gawada Board is, of course, of extreme importance. But there is a lot of coordination or the synchronization in the way that we move ahead with different projects throughout Pakistan, and of course, then with the Chinese personnel as well. And so the provincial governments and the federal government both will be very, very important to this, and security in all the provinces, particularly in Balochistan, would be very important too. So what exactly do you think will be the way forward, especially when we take a look at these very targeted areas and the way that there is a need to ensure that there is stability there for the success of such projects?
Right, Sana, thank you very much. That is a very wholesome and important question, and I'm going to come to that. But will you allow me to actually comment on something that the ambassadors have said and something that Faisal said? You see, Ambassador Saab was talking about geopolitical rise of China. So I would actually go back and refer to China's policy of peaceful rise. So far, we haven't seen any proof of China actually asserting on geopolitical front, with the exception of its assertion of one China policy. When it comes to one China policy, of course, it sees that matter as a matter of its own territorial integrity. So it does assert, right, like around Taiwan, elsewhere, Hong Kong as well. But otherwise, internationally, you wouldn't see any direct political role. And that is because China understands, China's worldview, unlike the US, is totally opposite, right? America sees itself as the shining city on the hill, right? China sees itself as the middle kingdom. It is the center of the world, and the rest of the world is a tributary. So the first thing that they have been actually trying to do, and I am sure that that is why BRI actually emerged, and that is why then we saw CPEC as well, is primarily to ensure that China is never cut off from global trade. It is never economically surrounded by any enemy, and that's why it has been exploring all the options that were possible. I think that Pakistan and China's CPEC project, our BRI cooperation, has nothing to do with politics. It is primarily, although Pakistan and China are simpatico, we are too close, and we work in tandem on all issues. But I don't think that this particular project has anything to do with politics at all. Having said that, of course, both countries keep on working together. Recently, we saw that we are reaching new grounds. For example, Pakistan's launch of its lunar, project, that was also thanks to China. Similarly, we launched our satellites, and which are now in orbit and functioning, and we are going to get high-speed internet very, very soon through satellite. So that was also courtesy China, although we developed the technology indigenously. Now, Faisal was talking about AI. I understand that critical infrastructure in essentially cyber world is very important, and Pakistan already has a lot, and China and Pakistan can work together. But when you talk about AI, I ask everybody to read a book, a beautiful book by one of the pioneers of AI in not in South Asia, in Asia particularly, and that is Kai-Fu Lee's AI Superpowers. So that actually tells you what exactly is the nature of the beast, how AI functions, and of course it is not that difficult to create an AI. But what then you need is to train it with data. Now, with Chinese economy in a particular shape and American technology, economy and another, there is a difference between the kind of data that is accessible to either of AIs, right? So Pakistan sits at this ideal place where Pakistan can benefit from both China and America. So if we have a wholesome experience, and our AI can actually progress. Now Pakistan's internal dynamics and which areas are going to be developed, how CPEC can benefit Pakistan, various parts. That entirely is up to our negotiation capacity. Like Gwadar, I've been telling you repeatedly that I've been going to Gwadar since it was nothing there, right? Practically nothing there. And now you see this infrastructure that has developed, and China has actually built this economic, more or less an economic zone there as well. But still, we haven't seen the kind of commercialization of space, or for that matter, our berths there either. So that will be very important. And then SEZs, Sana, they will be throughout the country. So everywhere, wherever you have the capacity, for example, Dashakai, you can really enhance that. One very quick answer to your actual question, and that is how to ensure stability and ensure that the three tiers of government actually work in tandem. So SIFC is going to take care of that business also.
All of the provincial coordination as well?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because remember, I gave you, you know, an analogy earlier, a few months ago, that Pakistan has a government which has 3 floors, right? And between these 3 floors and many doors or windows there, you are lost when you are an investor. But now what SIFC has done, it has you know, installed an elevator and an escalator. So you can reach anywhere very quickly and ensure that you get access to all these solutions that are needed. Of course, Balochistan being 44%, actually more than 50% if you include coastal belt as well, more than 50% of Pakistan territory is a huge space, and you will need a lot of effort there. But despite that, I'm sure that SIFC is so structured that it can work with all the tiers of government and ensure that if some hiccup is there, it can be taken care of.
All right. Ambassador Saab, I want your perspective on this as well. You can add to the discussion in terms of the roles that SIFC and other bodies will be able to play moving forward, especially in the way that we're going to ensure a smooth execution of the projects. But I want your take also in terms of the larger relationship that we'll have to balance with our relationships with other countries as well. And that, of course, includes the United States too. And while, of course, we talk about diplomacy and the importance of our allies and the ties that we have with each of them, how big of a challenge do you think this will be for Pakistan to be able to maintain that balance, and what would be expected in terms of the international community or our relationship with different countries when we take this discussion forward with trade and investment with China?
Now, so far we've been able to manage the equilibrium between the Chinese and the competitors of Chinese, which is US and its allies. So far, we've been able to somehow steer through it. But obviously, it will start getting harder and harder once the competition also starts into going to a different zone and a higher zone. And why I'm saying this competition, that countries, so many countries, and it is without an economic advantage, without gaining an economic strength, no country can have its natural byproduct, which is a geopolitical thing. See, China has introduced the Asian Infrastructure Development, Infrastructure Investment Bank, and with $200 billion to start with it and more. So why China, US and its allies obviously would feel that the competition is becoming higher because the World Bank does the same job. And then Chinese, just last week, the president of China, while he was having Arab state cooperation meeting, which is the 8th or probably 7th meeting, and Arab state leaders, the Gulf leaders in particular, and he asked them that, okay, we can call a peace conference for Gaza, right? We have witnessed last couple of years that the Chinese acceptance in this entire region, not only because of the BRI, not only, yes, of course, it started with the economic linkage and the soft the relations with all these countries, but then it has given them a natural byproduct. Let me come back to your point, what you were saying, SIFC and also equilibrium. So as I said, that equilibrium would gradually become harder, and we have to really focus more, and we have to concentrate our all energies on our diplomatic front with the political leadership the way they seem to be active in this particular aspect. So yes, it would be harder, but it would not be difficult, because the United States and its allies would try to use all possible means to subvert, or well, I shouldn't use the word subvert, to at least bring some hurdle on on this BRI success. And CPEC is the flagship segment of the BRI, and we understand why it's flagship. If it was not a flagship, then we wouldn't have had with Chinese the string of pearls. And if it was not flagship project, the Americans would not have had a string of lines with the Philippines, with India, with Australia, with Japan, and with all these countries. If that was the case, the U.S. and its allies, United States and UK, would not have gone into a defense agreement in these waters, which leads to the South China Sea. So these are some of those indicators which gives us a sense that probably the competition would become a little higher. And that is the reason the China, Russians, they are collaborating even on the military side. The Prime Minister's own wordings before he left for China is that China is #2 military power in the world. And if you combine the military power of Russians and Chinese, they almost are getting very close to it. And Chinese last couple of years, and particularly last one decade, they are every year gradually enhancing their military might and enhancing their budget. So I'll leave that here. This visit, and that's the why we are hopeful this time. The economic zone, which Bolan has really attained its completion of about 30 or 40%. The Abeji has attained its without, now this thrust of this very high power engagement with the Chinese, with our delegation, with our Prime Minister, with our government, and as you just listened to our panelist Faisal, that the Chief of Army Staff is also there, and his presence is a demonstration that any bottleneck in the implication or in the implementation of the project can be removed, and that is through the SIFC. That was very much needed, and right from the very beginning, once it was introduced, I give the example that once I was in UAE, the rulers there would say that, Ambassador, in your country, once we go there, there are more than 24 departments, and our people, they just keep from one department to another, running one department to another department, and then they really lose their hopes. And see what is happening in UAE. I'm talking about my time, that it's one window system, and anyone can come and start their business. So with SIFC, we have been not very fortunate to upgrade our rules, procedures, and systems, business-friendly system. In fact, we've been dealing, we've been trying to meet the challenges of 21st centuries with the tools of 19th century. I'm talking about the rules of business. I'm talking about the rules, regulations of movement of files. Still, we have that big, the big thread tied up with the files. Hardly in even the African countries where I've served, and I haven't seen, it's the file system is gone 19th century. So SIFC is now one platform which is giving a lot of confidence to the Chinese, and this is what the pledge which our high-level delegation is making, headed by the Prime Minister, that we will iron out any difficulty with. Chinese Consul General, Chinese ambassador himself has shared all these difficulties with me.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Ambassador Saab, I'd like your perspective also on what we're going to be discussing in our next segment, and that's, of course, what Pakistan has achieved as the non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. And this, of course, isn't the first time, but it is a huge margin by which we actually won. And so a lot of countries supported Pakistan's election. And so I want your understanding first in terms of the importance of this seat to begin with, and the way that Pakistan has previously fared as part of the UN Security Council, and what exactly can potentially be the role that the country will be able to play, considering the kind of challenges that we face in the international community, including, of course, the different conflict zones, including, of course, the issue of the self-determination of the people of Kashmir, of course, the issue of the genocide going on against the Palestinians, and, of course, much more around the world.
And I'll give you some indicators, but let me first compliment our diplomats who were involved in it. And in 2012, once we were we were elected as the rotational member of the Security Council, and they were about 2-3 votes short, falling short of it. And I was quite instrumental in just bringing those 2-3 countries where I had stayed. So that I can throw light on it. Why I just mentioned it, that how it works, that the diplomat starts working about 1-2 years in advance, and they start contacting various countries, their foreign offices, and they start taking their pledge that, okay, Pakistan would be contesting this very election in 2024-25. So we would like to have your support. And then those countries would say, okay, if we support you in this, if we vote for you in this, then there are other multilateral forum, and they would say, okay, then we are going to contest in this. Hope that you will give us a pledge. So these are sometimes, most of the times, written pledges, and then for that the diplomats have to really work very, very hard. And it's for this reason that Pakistan is, although it's 8th time, and this is a regional allocation of seats, rotational seats, but still there are so many competitors. And in fact, it's quite interesting that the India, we in this region, once it comes to the rotational seat, we do in a way support India, and India do support in a way Pakistan so far as this particular selection is concerned. So 15 members of the Security Council, and this in last 75 years is the 8th time. And out of 193 members of United Nations, and 190 members participated in it. 5 were they 2 were not eligible, 3 did not vote for it. But this is a very significant 182 votes out of 185 who participated in it. So it's more than 2/3 majority. You needed only 124. It's 58 extra votes we got, and that is a demonstration of a good work done by our people all around the world who have been taking pledges last 1.5-2 years for this particular election. Significance of Security Council, your question, the second part of your question. Significance of Security Council, definitely at a multilateral forum, you become more important player, because whenever there is anything discussed other than veto issues, you have your vote. And then there are so many things which are not highlighted around the world, and you can always bring it in a resolution of Security Council. So various countries, region-wise, they become a decision-making, they become part of the decision-making process of the global issues while you are a member of the Security Council. And then it is, it promotes the democratic principles around the globe and in the global community. It strikes the balance in power of the members and prevent, sometime there are certain agendas which once it's debated or once it goes into subcommittee, you have your vote and you have your perspective. Like you asked me about Kashmir. Now, we have been having a very clear instance about Kashmir, and we've been having a very clear instance about Gaza. You will see that out of these 15 members, Pakistan being one, you will see that what the outcomes emerge during the next
Absolutely,
session
and
once
Ambassador
we take
Farrukh,
over.
I actually have no doubt in the role that Pakistani diplomats will be playing on that front, and of course on this platform as well. But what I do have doubts about is the entire framework of the Security Council in itself, and the value or the impact that it can actually create in the world, because there is of course the aspect of veto that of course influences very important decisions around the world and the fate of so many people. So when we talk about the UN Security Council in itself, is that even a platform that is credible to that extent, that can actually achieve something?
We have to understand that this is purely a political platform. Did you ask me this question, or
Yes,
you asked
yes.
this question to? Okay,
Yes,
so
Ambassador.
we have to understand that this is a purely a political platform, and it's world politics are played here. So the interest, you have seen Gaza, how many resolutions have been passed. You have seen Kashmir, how many resolutions have been passed, and how many resolutions have been implemented. I will draw the attention of your viewers and yourself of the resolution 27 and December 27th. 2023 regarding Gaza, and they clearly instructed Israel to give a pause to the war, but Israel didn't accept it. Israel didn't accept the following
Yeah.
resolutions also. Why didn't accept? Because those resolutions were not passed under the provision of Chapter 6 of the United Nations Charter. And if it was passed under the provision of the United
Which is
Nations
which is
Chapter
which is
6,
what? Can you enlighten us?
which
Which
is
is what?
which is basically imposing sanction on any
Okay.
member state which
Yeah.
doesn't really comply with the resolution, then sanction is
But
through the
what about
chapter 6. And
what about the UN Security Council resolutions on Kashmir and the fact that India did not comply with them?
yeah, that's right, because that was never passed under Chapter 6 of the United Nations Charter. If it is passed under Chapter 6 of the United Nations Charter, the sanction would become a natural part
So
of it,
what
because in Chapter
consequence
6,
for
basically it's a
violations?
sanction which is imposed for non-compliance of the Security Council
Sure.
resolution. And F, like in East Timor and like since Kosovo and like other places, if Chapter 6 resolution is not complied with through the sanction, then they can go for Chapter 7. And Chapter 7 means the air, naval, and the ground forces can be launched, and the blockade can be done against those countries. And that's what
Okay.
they have done it in past, but very rarely. But here comes one point, and that is the veto. And if any if any resolution is vetoed, and in this case, Israel, you saw, once the question of membership of Palestine came into Security Council, it was vetoed. And if and basically even at the committee level, it is vetoed once there is anything against the interest of Israel, because the interest of Israel is protected by United States, and the United States
Right.
is veto
Absolutely.
power and its
I
allies.
understand.
So that is the difference. And then
I
the
understand those
secretary.
dynamics. Yes.
Ambassador Saab, I'm glad that we are talking about this accomplishment, and it is quite an accomplishment. But I wanted you to actually take a step back and look at the UN system itself. And given that it is still functioning within the parameters of something that might be almost gone, and that is Westphalian system. I mean, nation states are important players, but we have seen that there are many entities which might not be nation states, but they are also important. Is there ever a possibility that this Westphalian straitjacket will be removed from the UN, or some other body might be created?
I think we are heading towards that side. Ultimately, either there's some other bodies to be created, or the effort for the last about almost 11, 12 years, expansion of the Security Council and more veto powers. So if there are about 60 countries, they have collaborated as united for consensus. That is the title given to the 60 to 70 countries, and they are striving to expand this. They are striving hard to expand the Security Council membership and the veto powers of the membership. So
All
in
right.
that case, there would be more balancing factors.
Right, thank you very much,
Yeah.
Ambassador, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. That was Dr. Jamil Khan, former Ambassador, in the debate with us. And thank you, Farrukh and Faisal, for always being part of the discussion. That's all that we have from the show today, but we'll now see you on Monday.